Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Before we get into today's wonderful content, I have to thank someone for this content, and I also get to recommend to you a fabulous YouTube channel. That is Average Movie Man. He is a man who makes everything you want out of YouTube. He does the movies, he does the pop culture stuff. Everything you love about Lightspeed Brothers, he does it in a new and hilarious fashion, and I can't wait for you to check him out. So after you watch this video here today, go over to his channel, watch this video again because it was so good, and subscribe and watch the rest of his excellent content. But with all that out of the way, let's get into today's video. 2020 was a dark age, and in all dark ages, there is a hero, a protagonist, if you will, who looks to combat the evil forces around him.
In this case, it was a man. A movie man. Not just an average movie man, but the movie man. He was a man... Okay, I'll stop now.
Christopher Nolan is a symbol of quality filmmaking. In Nolan, we trust exists for a reason. The shirts don't make themselves, no. People, movie lovers, trust in this man's ability to give us reasons to get off our butts, pump $12 into the capitalist machine, and make something we will never forget. And so today, we're sharing our thoughts on what worked in Tenet and what didn't, and just how successfully it fought back in this time of uncertainty for an art form we love. This is the definitive version of Tenet versus COVID.
Can we talk about how I literally was completely lost for the first hour of this shit? The best way to describe the first hour of this movie was like I was failing a math test. I constantly felt as if I was getting it wrong, stuff would happen and I wouldn't know why, and when I thought I got it, I would find out that I was completely wrong. The first hour for me was such a hard to understand mess. Like, first he kills himself on some CIA mission, then he discovers time powers, then for some reason he goes to India with like no explanation until like 5 minutes after he's in India. Some random guy shows up and they break into some house with bungee cords. Then the people in the house tell him to go find some random Russian dude, so they go to Michael Caine for some fucking reason, and then he tells them to go see Russian man's wife, and then he just steal a fucking drawing for some reason. Like, what? I never understood why the drawing was there or why they needed to steal it. The movie does such a bad job explaining all this, even though 90% of the movie is explanation.
And I can't help but totally agree with my colleague. When we both were composing notes for this review, we both took note of how dominated this film is with exposition and how little we still understood. It's ironic because the film tells us to feel it, to just go along with the ride, but we can't because of how attacked we are with verbal filler. If you want me to look past the film's time stuff, fine, allow me to do so. But don't make me listen to people essentially explaining the rules of the film because then I can't feel anything. It's not going to be fun because I can't have fun unless I understand it. And sometimes it's the content itself that's messed up, and not that our brains are too feeble or anything related to that. Like in the theater, the sound mixing made it near impossible to hear certain things the characters were saying, exposition or not. And sometimes there's flat out poor communication and introductions, like with the thermal energy stuff. What the hell was that? Why? In this super complicated film already, would you include a chemistry lesson on thermal energy over halfway through the film and then abandon it thereafter? You didn't even build up the most basic time principles and allow the audience to understand that, and you want to add more stuff? It wasn't built up beforehand, it comes out of nowhere, and then it's never seen again. It's stuff like that that really makes you doubt the credibility of how the story is being told, rather than your own comprehension abilities.
But I do admit, once the pieces started to fit together, I got pretty invested in what was going on. All the time bullshit made the story a lot more enjoyable because you get to see what events were linked to each other. And it makes it a lot more fun to watch once you understand.
And I think that's a valuable point. The idea of moving forward and backward opens up possibilities for fantastic set pieces that we've never seen before, like the heist fight at the airport. But the film absolutely should have leaned more into that, allowing the actors in the film as a whole to be more fun and a little less cold at places when it's so poor at being that would have greatly increased the film's quality.
And speaking of fun, let's speak about Kenneth Branagh. The fuck? Kenneth Branagh. Because he's obviously having a great time with this movie. His performance as the main villain is straight up laughable, flat out comical at points where I couldn't even take him seriously. Like when he put his foot on the lady's face, I was laughing so fucking hard.
The collective cast of Tenet's characters is paper thin, and while we could take the easy way out and just blame the script like everyone else does, I think you have to take some shots at these performances. Branagh is hysterically one-note. He could be a villain on a Saturday morning cartoon, he's so flat, and his attempts to be menacing just fail to work in any capacity, and the rest of the cast follows suit. The more I think about John David Washington's performance, the more I can't stand it. At times, he attempts to fuse action hero one-liners in there, and he lacks the suave and comedic chops to make it work. It's beyond just being awkward and more along the lines of being flat-out reprehensible from an acting standpoint, as he fails at something that even the cast of The Fast and the Furious knows how to do with swagger and confidence.
But with all that said, where Tenet got lost is going back to the most basic things about movie making. The fact that our enjoyment of a film is at least somewhat proportionally tied to our care for the characters in play. If I don't care about the protagonist, I don't care about the villain. If all the other characters suck, why am I even watching the movie?
It's ironic that a man as intimately linked to the fight for cinema made a character so detached from the story in which he participates. The lack of investment the protagonist has in these matters reflects back onto us, leading us not to at all come to terms with the stakes Nolan wants to raise. So often you hear about Nolan crafting a set piece, and I think that's a praise he's totally deserving of. Just with a simple pan, he makes already gargantuan objects in his movies seem otherworldly. The gaze Nolan employs behind the camera is wholly unique and elevates even the most basic of set pieces to full-fledged cinematic events. If you are a relative youngin' throughout the 2010s, you know the videos. The ugliness of blockbusters, the lack of recognizable sound and music they have, the lack of creativity, the laziness of the set pieces, the way they use CGI to get around the action. Tenet, ideologically, is a really well-crafted response to these criticisms on what the last decade of blockbusters lacked, where there were shortcomings, and how we can fix them to make an experience that seems tailor-made to entice people back to the movies.
I think that the movie worked well on a technical level for the most part, but fails in character moments and personality. So in the end, it really is a shame that a movie that promised so much and looked so promising just gave us so little.